Do I become a track rider? Do I go out and buy a sports bike?
Well, there's no problem. If you had a gun, shoot him in the head.
We are closest to the inside.
So initially getting on the track, mindset of, hey, I've been on the street for years. There's a term I think some of us like to say, and it's like, hey, it's going to be full send, right? So I get out on the track and I say, it's going to be full send today. And I try to get it up into 6th gear as quickly as possible. And I quickly learned that that probably wasn't a recipe for success.
We like people with that mentality. They come to the school, they're all in, they're living it, breathing it. And you know, it's exciting when you see other people that are that kind of into it and motivated, and you know, it makes it motivating for us as coaches because you know that they're going to be kind of that all-in student and working to really improve. You know, they just are so committed to what they're doing.
So are we rolling?
Is this it?
Are we rolling?
Oh, we're rolling.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
we're rolling. What's your secret, man, when it comes to riding that Challenger?
I'm willing to put everything on the line to get on the podium.
All the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call to quits.
You know what bike I'm on. You and I were talking earlier, so really important question for you. Challenger or R1?
Give it to me.
Podiums on the Challenger, so it's like here, and then the R1's just my baby, so I couldn't pick.
We're going to talk about those podiums, by the way. We're going to talk. And so, you know, maybe for those that aren't familiar, just describe your journey into professional racing.
Yeah, I mean, I started in England. We did grass track when I was young. I came up through the ranks. I won some national championships there. And then my dad always wanted to do road racing. In England, you can't start till you're 15. Here, you can start at 12. And now even earlier with Ovalis and everything. So we came here, started racing flat track for a year. Then we started racing USGPRU with the Marawakis and just kept going. At 16, I went pro on an R6, and then I got picked up by a team when I was 18. I've been racing stock 1000 Superbike ever since, and then Baggers picked me up last year and got my first couple podiums. And I would definitely try to use your rear brake more with these things, because the Baggers, if you're not front and rear end, they ain't stopping.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen.
Max, man, thanks for your time, man.
No problem, bud.
Fan favorite, paddock favorite,
Try.
Max. Thanks, brother.
No problem.
I swear we're good at this. One of Dan's on crutches. He fell out of a U-Haul, so that's different. Don't beat up on us too much on that.
Yeah, we'll hurt ourselves not even crashing sometimes. Right?
Yeah. So.
But no, rule number 5, you'll hear it a lot. Hey, remember rule number 5, ask the questions, get the comments across. I swear, no stupid questions. If one of y'all ask it, I swear someone else is thinking it. So rule number 5.
If there is a tip over, there's a couple flags, couple things that you might see. If you see someone that has fallen over, bike's laying on the side, rider looks very sad next to it, we'll get our hands up. Just come on in the pits. If we got to roll an ambulance or get the staff out there to move the bike, it just speeds it up for everybody. It gets everyone back out a little bit sooner. Turn to your other neighbor and say, today is all about me, 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 me. Right? That comes from a 4-time world champion, Eddie Lawson. He said, you think about your riding, the rest will take care of itself. You think about your riding, the rest will take care of itself. Yeah, I think it's As far as the dynamics of the bike, we do this on a racetrack, obviously, because it's the safest place. We can push if something happens. There's ambulances, there's runoff, there's all the reasons of why the racetrack is so safe. But it is very different to the street, right? Visually, it's very different. It's a lot wider. You're not used to using that much of the road. So, you know, I think there's a lot of just technique-wise, it's all the same stuff, but visually, I think that is the biggest thing.
Next thing is going to be this braking reference for turn 1.
Girls were in a gallus, so shit in a dillo. I hold a gun, but in a kilo. Can I keep it any fellow? Girls were in a gallus, so shit in a dillo.
We're going to get rolling here in a minute, but big focus is just going to be on Apex. New track, pretty much all of us.
Still screaming out that chain guy, whole man, whole team, young jack,
I had no idea of what I was going to get into today. You're out on the track with professional riders, right? Like, these are people that have serious credentials behind their names. They're giving immediate feedback to say, yeah, you're doing a good job, but you could do even a little bit better if you just did X or if you just did Y. And for me today, that was huge, right? I mean, I ride aggressive, I ride hard, and I ride technical streets. But even the most technical street and riding hard isn't anything like riding on a track, which from my perspective after doing it today is more challenging, more fun, and more rewarding, right? Prior to coming here, I took the Champ U online courses, which were incredibly helpful. But I think today on the track, it all comes together whenever you're trying to implement those things. And some of those things I tried to implement on my own before I got here, obviously. Case in point, there were probably 2 things that I can remember from the online university that just really clicked for me today, right? So the first thing was when I was watching Chris in Champ U saying, what's next? What's next? What's next? That theoretically made sense to me on the street. Where I'm going with that, this whole notion of what's next, for me to do that out on the street, it kind of didn't make sense to me, right? But here on the track, things happen so quickly that if you're not looking forward, if you're not saying what's next, if you're not thinking that in your mind, and you're not pointing your eyes and your head in that anticipatory direction, you're not going to have a good lap, right? You're not going to have a good time, and potentially it's going to be dangerous, right?
If anything kind of jumped up, we'll run through some of these when we get back to our notebooks. If there's something that jumped out that you want to write down, I'll remind you of a bunch of the stuff that we did. What do we think about 2-ups?
Oh, shit.
Helpful? Who was shocked by the amount of brake pressure they could carry with 2-up? Right? When you put that load in initially, you can see they will continue to ramp the pressure to get the thing slowed down. You got to think, now all of a sudden you got 400 pounds of rider on there. It is a lot more pressure that you need to get the thing slowed down. Who was shocked by the acceleration? Right? When the bike really truly has direction, if you could do this, you get to do this, right? And that's the fun part, which is we worked so hard on that corner edge to put the bike in position where we get to finally let the thing drive off the corner, which is kind of cool. Something has changed that we were not accounting for, right? It's the road you ride every Sunday, but this weekend the deer is there, or the car comes across the double yellow, or there's gravel on the street. There's always that one other element, but we need to be able to respond to whatever the situation kind of is. So, pointy end of the cone is this. If Ryan was gonna come around here, let's make a 90-degree corner and apex on the table. You'd be out there, use all your road as you can off the wall. He slows, beautiful apex, gets going, but this lap,
You know, quite candidly, it's really hard to put that to words, right? It's really hard to put it to words when you're trying to distill down probably 16 hours plus of instruction. But what I would say is anybody can watch YouTube, anybody can read the internet, anybody can talk to their friend that rides a bike that's similar to them. But when you're literally riding with professionals, right? It's on you if you don't get better, and it's on you if you don't get better quickly, right? So some of my best laps, and I didn't know this because I'm not a track rider, right? But my best laps were whenever a pro would get in front of me and motion and say, follow me, right? And I would follow, and immediately I would see that my pace and my speed picked up, that I was hitting every apex perfectly. I was hanging off the bike, I was following, and they're looking in their mirrors and they can see what I'm doing, and they're giving me like, hey, you're doing it right, or hey, don't forget, look this way, or hey, don't forget, we're gonna go on to brakes whenever we go into this corner. So having that opportunity to literally ride with a pro right in front of you, telling you exactly what to do, those were some of the best rides of my entire life, and I've logged a lot of miles over the years. You know, it's a really good question, right? And it's a question, unfortunately for me, but you know, the coaches at the end of the day said we want to be your coach for life. So it's not as if I have a question and I can't reach out to them and ask them a question. I know for me, one of the things that I'm processing in my mind right now is there are some skills that are taught in this class that I know as a street rider, I can immediately apply that to the street, right? There are some other skills that I think of, and I think to myself, there might not be many, and I might be wrong about this, right? Like I want to talk to the coaches, but there might not be many scenarios on the street unless I am like ridiculously pushing, perhaps even beyond the limits of what I should be pushing on the street, where I could use a particular technique, right? Maybe not all of them, because a lot of stuff, you know, it applies to street or track. It just maybe applies in a different way. Like if you're getting off the bike, maybe you're not getting off the bike as much or whatever. But I think that's what's on my mind is immediate application, right? When we introduced ourselves to each other at the beginning of class, I talked about how for many years I usually average around 12,000 miles a year, and that's because I ride about 1,000 miles a month and I ride year round, right? And I share that simply because for me, it's not like I'm going to go home on the sofa and think of, like, I have a 3.5 hour ride home from here. I rode the bike here. So I'm going to be applying exactly what I learned on that 3.5 hour ride from here.
A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. So he loses touch with reality and lives in a world of illusions. By thoughts, I mean specifically chatter in the skull, perpetual and compulsive repetition of words, reckoning and calculating.
No worries, man. It's just one of those things there's so much seeing.
I'm not saying that thinking is bad. Like everything else, it's useful in moderation. A good servant, but a bad master. And all so-called civilized peoples have increasingly become crazy and self-destructive because through excessive thinking they have lost touch with reality. That's to say, we confuse science with the real world. This is the beginning of meditation. most of us would have rather money than tangible wealth, and a great occasion is somehow spoiled for us unless photographed. And to read about it the next day in the newspaper is oddly more fun for us than the original event. This is a disaster. For as a result of confusing the real world of nature with mere science, we are destroying nature. We are so tied up in our minds that time to wake up. What is reality? Obviously, no one can say, because it isn't words. It isn't material.